were to tell you there was a League of Legends champion, one with a set of abilities unlike any other in the game, who's been in TFT more times than Rammus, been a part of Legends of Runeterra since its beta, got to be the final boss of a spin-off game, was added to Wild Rift before nearly every other champion released in the last 3 years, gotten numerous rigged and ready 3D models with chibi versions, skins, merchandise, animatronic statues, and a full-on event dedicated to their release. What if I told you that despite all of that equating to an amount of dedicated content most of the original 40 champions could only dream of, I wasn't even talking about an actual champion at all. I'm talking about a goddamn robot dinosaur. While us PC players were enjoying Swarm and the Anima Squad event, Wild Rift was instead gearing up for Arcane Season 2. 4 months in advance, adding all sorts of Hextech-inspired map elements and gameplay features, items, and jungle camps, but most importantly, this nifty little thing called the T-Hex. It didn't seem like much or anything crazy at all for Wild Rift players. They actually welcome radical new gameplay additions while us Master Race folks are still intolerant to change. But this was insane for everyone actually in the know about this character. The T-Hex wasn't just some random thing the Wild Rift team pulled out of their pocket. This bucket of bolts has become essentially a routine cameo, almost a staple of the franchise at this point, yet I think most people are completely unaware of just how many times it keeps popping back up. Hello! It's almost like someone at Riot really wants the T-Hex to become a household name for League fans, and with the way it was introduced into Wild Rift, it's almost like someone wants it to one day become a full-on champion in League of Legends proper. Well, I'm no Rioter, not even in the partner program. Oh shit. But I am that someone who wants the T-Hex to be a playable champion in League of Legends.
Did you guys know most dinosaurs that got killed in the asteroid? Most dinosaurs that got killed actually survived. Isn't like crocodiles a dinosaur?
Growing up, I collected every cheap dinosaur toy I could. Had very questionable choices and favorite films for a kid my age. Every birthday meant yet another VHS tape of the seemingly endless conveyor belt of Land Before Time sequels. And that love for paleo media has persisted throughout my entire life. In fact, what got me into League of Legends in the first place was cho'gath being as close to a playable dinosaur in a video game that I could afford at the time. And didn't completely suck.
Duco Minute win.
Yet fast forward through 16 years of League of Legends, and we get sword fighters, anime babes, and nightmare-inducing horrors on a near-yearly basis. But you know what we still don't have yet? An archetype long missing from this game? A giant robot dinosaur. So after 6 years of this character existing, 6 years of seeing all this wasted potential, 6 years of waiting for my dream to come true, I gave up on Riot Games to fulfill it and said fine.
I'll do it.
So began my most ambitious and most expensive project I have ever done on this channel. To do Riot's job for them. To turn the T-Hex into its own playable champion. How?
It's kind of a long story.
Part 1. What the hell is this thing? The T-Hex first appeared all the way back in LOR's 2020 open beta as a signature part of Heimerdinger's gameplay pattern. By spending mana while a Heimerdinger is on your board, you generate a turret of varying strength. The more expensive the spell, the more menacing the machine. And at 8 mana, the T-Hex was the most powerful machination available. You know, in theory, to the competitive community, this was essentially worthless.
This isn't how you're supposed to play the game.
With no special keywords or effects besides big number, it can easily be blocked by any 0 mana inanimate object, while the turret less than half its price can't be blocked by 95% of cards in the game. Meanwhile, on the lore side of the community, the T-Hex's entire existence was written off as completely insane! Because honestly, for what possible reason would Heimerdinger even make this? What logical service does a 10-story tall cyber dinosaur even provide to Piltover? Why is the cockpit in its mouth? I think even Riot knew we were never supposed to take this seriously, only solidified by the existence of its Guardian, a class of cosmetics not too unlike TFT's own chibi champions, essentially functioning as a further satirization of the already ridiculous concepts of the League mythos by chibifying them. You know, like powder monkeys, friendly fae folk, Professor Von Yip, Shark Chariot. graves. However, there's always been a wavering uncertainty to just how much of LOR is really canon, especially after Arcane, thanks Arcane, and with the T-Hex Guardian's lack of skin variations compared to God.
I'm in fucking Minecraft.
The message was clear. The T-Hex was nothing more than a joke and would be swiftly forgotten. One of the many hundreds of characters left to rot until their corpses could be repurposed and renamed for an entirely separate card game. That was until November 9th, 2021. Riot Forge revealed it was alive after all.
That one didn't age quite so well.
After months of radio silence, not only was the Ruined King game shadow dropped out of nowhere, but it was accompanied by the reveal of a brand new rhythm game, Hextech Mayhem. And lo and behold, Heimerdinger was the antagonist, foiling the innocent Ziggs' efforts of just having fun by slowly building up an unknown ultimate weapon, finally revealing in the climactic final battle that it was the T-Hex all along.
It was me!
Sporting a new design made to match the game's definitely charming and not at all terrifying art style, featuring a more upright posture, rounded cartoonish proportions, the ability of speech, sometimes, a full assortment of weapons from the minigun and club arms, rocket launcher, full 360 rotation, stomping so loud the very ground shakes, and again, Heimerdinger piloting it from inside its mouth. Seriously, dude, this is a critical design flaw. It was truly incredible, but surprisingly not as revolutionary as it could have been, as the aforementioned, and let's be honest, far more anticipated, Ruined King had just spoiled us with numerous surprise LOR cameos. So the T-Hex as Hextech Mayhem's final boss was easily chalked up to just that, a cameo. After all, it was a silly concept, so it felt right at home within such a silly game. It was wonderful to see it return, but we knew it was unlikely to ever do so again. That was until May 30th, 2023. The T-Hex was somehow back again, this time functioning as the premier piece for the Piltover trait in TFT's Set 9 Runeterra Reforged. Much like the Fortune, Mercenaries, and Underground traits of previous sets, the Piltover trait required you to lose as many rounds in a row as possible before securing a single win, after which you'd be granted a substantial reward. However, instead of the usual reward of gold or items, the Piltover trait would spawn the T-Hex, and the cash out would directly power it up, granting it strength, size, stats, and with a high enough cash out, even new abilities. Or, you know, I guess you could just sell the T-Hex for some more standard rewards.
You make me sick!
While not technically its own unit like Silco, Som, or the 5 billion others from Set 13, it didn't change the fact that, like them, it was fully 3D modeled from the ground up, again with a brand new design.
Cecil, what the hell am I now?
You're you, but better.
Less Hanna-Barbera than Hextech Mayhem, not as chibi as the LOR Guardian version, but not quite as titanic as its LOR illustration. And this was intentional. As confirmed by the devs, this T-Hex, while sticking closer to the LOR version, was designed to strike a middle ground between cool and cute, so as not to jar too much with TFT's art style. You know, back when that meant anything. This was the T-Hex's second return, and the first, so far only one of 2 times, a character from LOR had been fully modeled, rigged, and realized in League's engine. Personally, I was enthralled. Not only because of just how hilarious it is a literal NPC has gotten more attention from Riot than half of the actual Piltover champions, but because I have long been an advocate of Riot using the star-studded cast of LOR in more of their games. In fact, there's numerous videos on this very channel discussing all the amazing Runeterra originals that could work perfectly as champions in League of Legends.
Jack! Oh, Jack!
And the T-Hex was one of them. But if you couldn't tell by my riveting justification for its inclusion boiling down to essentially...
It's a dinosaur.
Just like most of the LOR characters that sound cool as champions on paper, the idea is a mere silly fantasy. Even with a fully rigged and ready 3D model in TFT, the T-Hex playable on Summoner's Rift.
It's preposterous!
You couldn't even make a moveset for it realistically. It's too stupid and too silly. There's no way Riot would ever do that. Was until June 26, 2024. The T-Hex was back again, and this time with enough fanfare to make any League band not named KDA die of envy. This time really emphasizing the dinosaur-like elements with more prehistorically accurate proportions, a more Jurassic Park accurate head, replacing the club with a more comically accurate baby hand, alongside new colors, textures, and accents to give it a look look much closer to the most modern version of the Hextech aesthetic, at least, you know, at the time.
It was.
What's most interesting about this appearance, though, is that it again upped the ante of the T-Hex's importance. From meme card to cameo boss to win condition to now being the focus, the selling point, the central gameplay addition of this entire event, changing Wild Rift up dramatically, as now, by slaying the Baron, your team would no longer gain its buff. Instead, the T-Hex would spawn in your base. And just like Rek'Sai Tunnels or Skarner Spires, all one player would need to do is stand on top of it for a brief moment to hop inside. For the first time ever, the T-Hex was playable, and I mean fully playable. Unique stats, passive, entire set of abilities, and even ultimate move. To all the folks saying that Wild Rift would never make an exclusive champion, that's pretty much what this was, and Riot seemed incredibly proud of it. Just look at all that promotional material. They made a whole ass animatronic statue, my dude. All this promotional material wasn't just awesome, it solidified this version of the T-Hex as its official design, evident even by something as recent as its return to TFT in Set 14, where the old Set 9 model was updated to match the design of the Wild Rift version.
I'm the upgrade.
So, with that brief history lesson out of the way, it should be pretty clear by now the T-Hex isn't just some throwaway joke anymore. For how many times it's been updated, how many new iterations it's received, how it's touched every single corner of the League IP, except for League of Legends itself. Which then begs the question, why hasn't Riot taken that next logical step, bringing it into the Summoner's Rift and making it an official champion in League of Legends? Well, the easy answer is that
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
a playable giant robot dinosaur from Runeterra, it's ridiculous. League takes itself way too seriously for that. It'd be like trying to make God a playable character, or a real-world K-pop star, or a designer's OC, or a literal cat, or wait a minute. Part 1.5. How do we do it? I think it would be totally possible for Riot to turn the T-Hex into a real champion. It's just for a few reasons it would be,
Complicated.
gameplay-wise, it'd be challenging to pull off its thematic fantasy of being a giant robot dinosaur without intentional nerfs to its power or size. Personality-wise, it doesn't really have one, as it's a literal tool in the service of other characters. Logically, it couldn't even exist, as canonically dinosaurs do not exist in Runeterra. Doubled down by Heimerdinger's recent, exit, there's a high probability that just like the Riot Forge games which first brought it back into the spotlight, the T-Hex has been completely retconned out of existence. But honestly, these are no roadblocks, they're more like guidelines, really. The T-Hex could absolutely still work as a champion despite all these problems, because it would offer something League of Legends has never seen before. Not with modern budget and tech anyway. A champion existing solely because of its thematic fantasy, solely because of the idea that being able to play as a giant robot dinosaur in League of Legends sounds f***ing coolish. Part 2. Necrit segment. Back in the prehistoric ages, Riot didn't really care about lore or thematic cohesion all that much. If an idea looked good on paper, they immediately patented it, packaged it, slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now they sold it. They sold it within the span of a couple weeks. This rushed production pipeline of narratively bankrupt character fantasies resulted in a rather disorganized cast of initial champions, but they were still all alike in one regard. They were all created as direct knockoffs of Dota 2 because the character archetype sounded fun to play as. Armored Bear, Rock Monster, Time Wizard, Spartan Soldier, Demon Child, Sad Child, Child and Friend, Crossbow Rat, Good Angel, Bad Angel, Redhead Assassin, Lunkhead Sword Master, The Average American, and Evil Murder Clown that couldn't be more generic if you tried.
You're not the funny one!
This rather hollow design process is in rather stark contrast to how League is approached today. Not just because characters release every 14 weeks as opposed to every 14 days.
2 weeks!
But narratively, they're designed in such a way that it feels as though every single one of them is fighting for that prestigious spot of main character. Every new champion release has to be the coolest, most awesome, most important thing that has ever happened to their respective region, but doing so often comes at a cost. Whether that's by forcefully introducing entirely new regions, changing established rules to how this universe even functions, or by having little to no connections with any other existing champions. Without their special vacuum to justify their existence, many of these champions could be completely written out of Runeterra like they never even existed, and the impact on the lore would be minimal, if not outright zero, only to be tossed aside and forgotten anyway. Tell me, which of these champions have received any sort of narrative progression beyond their initial debut? How many struggled to even get a second skin out the door? If at all.
I have nothing! Do you hear me? I have nothing!
But here's the thing. I'm not trying to say that lore doesn't matter. I mean, I made a whole damn video on why it's so important for Aurelian's sake. I'm mainly just trying to bring attention to just how much lore and narrative impacts every champion release, especially nowadays. So if the T-Hex was made into a champion today, then they'd have to be given a story like a modern champion, right? You know, make it the main character, give it a story arc, develop personality, voice lines, but at that point, is it even the T-Hex anymore? Monsters have proven that they can absolutely be sentient, or even the protagonist of the story, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. Dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, the Xenomorphs in Alien, Godzilla. Sure, yeah, they're intelligent, but these are monsters sold primarily on how cool, scary, and non-human they are. If halfway through the film they spontaneously start talking, no matter what kind of voice they're given, the immersion is completely broken, and the thematic fantasy is lost.
Something funny going on. You better check.
It was totally okay that the T-Hex spoke in Hextech Mayhem. That game was meant to be more cartoony. But to me at least, the character fantasy and main appeal of something like a playable T-Hex stems from how awesome it would be to play as a badass giant robot dinosaur. And to fully capitalize on that concept would mean no talking. And I know what you're thinking, this isn't anything new for Riot Games. They've tackled something similar to this twice before already. But well, one of those champions managed to weasel their way into the spotlight in large part because their design is awesome and narratively Riot made them into a god. The other is fortunate enough if at least 1/5 of the player base remembers she even exists. Who? But Rek'Sai is still a good point of reference, a pivotal example of what happens if we lean too far in the opposite direction, sacrificing too much narrative so that they can fully indulge in thematic fantasy. She completely encapsulates the idea of a monstrous sand shark, but because of that, is only a monstrous sand shark, a secret cave encounter of the Shurima region, a beast that could be replaced with any of the numerous raid bosses beneath the Sai Desert, and all that would change story-wise is a character model from a single cinematic.
Oh yeah!
All this stuff combined makes the T-Hex's chance at being a real champion an incredibly difficult balancing act. Could you make a champion sold almost exclusively on its archetype of being a giant robot dinosaur without encapsulating its theme so well it loses all narrative importance and champion interactions, making it the main character without giving it any kind of story arc, voice lines, personality, or any other form of anthropomorphization that would detract from its core thematic fantasy? In my mind,
Out to shore, everybody! Just push in! Take that, random tree!
no. It very well could be possible, but my proposition is something completely different, because we'd be doing something entirely unheard of for League, using the release of a new champion as a platform to update an old one.
Every action sparks a reaction. Oh, balls.
I think Arcane may have made us forget that not only is Heimerdinger's entire biography barely half the length of Belveth's passive, but also an itsy-bitsy, ever so slightly tiny detail that Yordles are functionally immortal.
Oh, what do you know? It's unkillable.
So whether he rematerialized in Vandal City somewhere or teleported to yet another new dimension, there is no shred of doubt in my mind that the Arcane creator's favorite champion isn't alive somewhere living his best life. And that's important because that was his whole character arc. The living his best life part, not the dying. In Season 1, Heimerdinger was quirky but controlled. One can't make a prototype without breaking a few wrenches. Except never actually do that, those wrenches are expensive. Deluded by his sense of caution, apathetic of mortal lifespans and real progress, so much so he forgot what it meant to live, to take risks, to have fun. This Heimerdinger would never design something like the T-Hex, he'd be the one dismantling it. Or more realistically, he'd probably tell one of his understudies to dismantle it while he went to go watch the opera. But in Season 2, Heimerdinger is a changed man, someone who has truly lived.
Sun Tzu said that.
He's finally experienced the world outside of his bubble, become someone fully active in his community, inventing to aid, but also to entertain. This Heimerdinger would 100% create a giant robot dinosaur just to see the children's excitement of witnessing a myth made real. Segue. This also doubles as a great workaround of one of our other previous problems. Dinosaurs aren't technically canon to League, and they don't have to be. I mean, here on Earth, dinosaurs were once real, but that doesn't stop dragons from becoming monsters of myth and legend. So in my mind, since dragons are already prevalent across almost every single continent on Runeterra, we could easily just flip the script and have dinosaurs be the mythological creatures of this world. You'll get surfer. Going this route, the T-Hex in itself isn't technically its own character, but instead a symbol of Heimerdinger's character growth, his latest and greatest creation to personify his change in values. Maybe, you know, this is even a bit too far. Maybe now he's becoming a bit too much of a risk taker, too focused on fun, while his friends and colleagues need to find a way to snap him back to reality. This is, you know, assuming that he actually is back in reality at all.
Oh. Yep, he's dead.
But my point still stands. This T-Hex would be the side character in its own story, so that instead, an older champion in desperate need of course correcting could be propped up, but would still work in tandem as it could now have its character fantasy fully fleshed out in-game, unimposed. Which reminds me, how would it even play? Part 3. Life is like a video game. The obvious answer here would be to just port over the already complete Wild Rift version, but granted it functioned as an entire team's Baron buff funneled into one player, so it had to be overpowered by nature, but yeah, there is no world where this moveset gets anywhere inside League of Legends without breaking it. Darn. Passive armor, magic penetration, reduced max health damage, 2 charges of AoE slows, 15 seconds of lane-wide shield and stat buffs, a repositionable laser beam that hits towers, and permanent crowd control immunity. It's all a bit too much individual character power for any multiplayer game not named Marvel Rivals.
Extermination!
Even for Wild Rift in the end, with how many balance changes it received over such a brief existence, and even achieving the mid-scope update world record barely a couple months after its launch, with its Q, Missile Blitz, being completely reworked into Bootleg Rift Herald.
They stole it from me, Carmine! They took it!
I'm sure there's an argument to be made that this moveset could still work in League somehow with some tweaks and tuning, especially because I do think it decently captures the thematic fantasy that we're looking for out of a champion like this. Its sheer size, durability, weapons, and laser beam, it all really makes you feel like a giant robot dinosaur. And considering that this champion's entire concept hinges on its ability to pull off said thematic fantasy, I think regardless of how it's implemented, those core features should be kept intact. Keep in mind, I'm no gameplay designer, not by a long shot, but I think after all this time I have at least learned to pinpoint when a champion's kit fails to live up to what their concept promises. To that end, the most obvious solution to pitching a fully new T-Hex toolset would be to make it some sort of jungle or top lane tank of sorts, right? As historically the champions there have had more wiggle room for how durable and big they can get. But by molding the T-Hex to that already established archetype, not only would it be nothing unique, but it more than likely would have to lose out on damage to compensate. Not to say that staples of those roles can't do damage, it's just that for top lane especially, be honest. I'm fine. Does anyone really want more of these guys in the game? Besides, I think for the T-Hex we would like the artillery robot to have access to its arsenal of ranged weapons, which is something top lane already suffers enough from, so by focusing on that aspect we could square it right in the middle of the map. Maybe make it some sort of tanky AP juggernaut with a dash of poke sprinkled in, but yeah, at that point we're kind of just reworking Galio, huh? I think if worst came to worst and the T-Hex could only be implemented through either of these ways, it would still be fine. But I also think for the T-Hex to feel really special, it would need to offer something special. Something that League doesn't have yet, and well, this might sound like heresy coming from me of all people, but I think the T-Hex could carve out its niche as an ADC. The tanky ADC. I'm not talking about how the infamous lane end partner Abandoner Graves is a tanky ADC, nor am I talking about Urgot, who, if that's all the rage you need to be considered a marksman, then I guess my ADC Recon arc begins now. More so, I mean an actual bot lane ADC, one that sacrifices total damage and speed for durability and utility. Tailor-made for those all too frequent situations where, much like the champions narratively, every one of your teammates is fighting to be the main character, leaving you, the bot laner with your limited champ pool, an option now to be a more supportive member of your team without the horror of having to play a different class of champion.
I would rather die.
The T-Hex in this case would provide less DPS overall than your usual hyper carries, but it's made up for in slows, crowd control, and enough tankiness to take a few hits. Not that the T-Hex would be a true frontliner in this case or build tank items at all, I just think it should be tanky enough to allow the character model to scale in size without it becoming a security risk. A pseudo raid boss in a way, a big bulky unit that can take a few hits and deal out a good amount of damage as a way to call back to its roots as a final boss in Hextech Mayhem. But would this be balanced? Would this even be interesting? Would it work at all, considering this entire concept is kind of what old Urgot was trying to be in that, well, we know how well that worked out. But you know, the funny thing about that oh so special balance is that
I don't care.
apparently neither does the player base, which is funny after all these years. Suddenly the community is all up in arms about how League is too balanced now. And sure, maybe a tanky marksman could do the trick to tilt the scales a bit, but since the main goal of making the T-Hex into a champion would be, besides making a giant robot dinosaur, is the extension of that, which is
fun. If it's not fun, why bother?
So I do think the T-Hex as a character should have something really special to make it stand out among the rest of the bot lane cast. I know excitement and fun are things that most ADC mains are practically allergic to, but they have dabbled in novel ideas once or twice. And I know that you know that I know what he knows that I'm thinking. Do a Zyricon combo with the T-Hex and Heimerdinger, right? Yeah, sure. Maybe the T-Hex has natural health regen or extra shields when around Heimerdinger. Maybe the T-Hex itself slightly buffs up Heimerdinger's turrets. But that's still only just a slight variation on a concept that's existed in League for almost a decade at this point.
This is his nice way of saying we're older than dirt.
No, what I'm thinking is purely wishful, as it would never happen. But did you know the T-Hex's full name is technically the T-Hex Mecha? Do you remember Heroes of the Storm? Have you ever heard of cho'gath?
2 players, 2 heads, sharing 1 body. Unusual limitations coupled with exciting new gameplay experiences.
Listen, I said to introduce something League hasn't seen before. Besides, that game's den buried so far down the real dinosaurs could see it, okay? It's fine if Riot yoinks the idea. Just imagine if when Heimerdinger and the T-Hex are picked together in the bot lane, then Heimer hops inside to pilot the T-Hex just like he's done in all the other games, letting 2 players control different aspects and attributes of one combined mecha champion, with a whole set of new and upgraded abilities to toy around with. It would be complete and utter chaos, especially with friends, unlikely to ever be competitive, a nightmare to make skins for, but undoubtedly
fun. It's fun. Bother.
The problem is, Riot wouldn't bother. No matter how conspiratorial I've become about its constant inclusions, or how much the devs themselves seem to want it too, this is still Riot Games we're talking about. A company that's shown time and again it has zero interest in creating new monster champions beyond mandated reworks or real-world house pets, meaning ultimately the T-Hex is nothing but the pipe dream of a dino kid who grew up on this junk, who wants so badly to have a real playable dinosaur in their favorite video game to the point of obsessing over the idea, to the point of anger over Riot's reluctance to make it a reality, to the point of saying, well, screw you, if you won't do it, then I will. I'll make it a reality, which by proxy means Mark Jin.
I am completely broke!
With full transparency, a very different version of this video was already supposed to be out a year ago. Essentially just a T-Hex timeline recap, but over time a wicked idea, and the T-Hex itself kept on creeping back into the spotlight. I mean, over the course of making this new version of the video, the T-Hex didn't just return to TFT twice, it also turns out it was a she this whole time.
I always did like big girls!
But all these frequent reappearances only confirmed my hunch that Riot has been intentionally pushing this character to become a mainstay of the League IP, and has exposed me to just how many other players besides myself also want it to be a real champion someday. Yet for whatever reason, Riot is reluctant to pull that final trigger themselves, so eventually...
Get on with it!
Yes, get on with it!
Yeah, I guess you have been waiting almost 30 minutes for what the title of this video promised, huh? Well, if you've seen my Cassiopeia ASU video, I think you already know exactly what I wanted to do from the very start. We did it! The T-Hex is in League of Legends. Kinda. Maybe a bit of false advertising. It's not entirely its own separate champion. There's only so much you can do with modding in League, but it is as close as we could possibly get. First off, the custom skin was unfortunately created before TFT Set 16 brought over the Wild Rift redesign's animations, and even before Set 14 brought over the Wild Rift redesign at all. So technically, we were the first to port over that version of the T-Hex to PC, although the model was the only thing that could be ported over. And because smushing it down to somehow fit the TFT Set 9 rig would completely go against the design goals of this project, it meant that everything from rigging, animation, audio, and spell effects all had to be made from scratch. However, these were no roadblocks. They were more like guidelines, really, allowing us the opportunity to adjust the model however we saw fit. I failed to mention this earlier in the video, but if you have eyes, you may have noticed that across all the promotional material, venues, and cinematics, the T-Hex had a more true to T-Rex style head shape, yet for some reason the in-game model was stuck with this weird boxy toy-like head. To me personally, if the T-Hex is meant to embody that rule of cool, it should probably look a little less silly than what Wild Rift ultimately offered us, and after a bit of tweaking and remodeling, I think the end result of our custom skin is far closer to that cinematic design. Plus, it helps this version of the T-Hex stand apart from all the rest, especially all the inevitable custom skins of that new TFT Set 16 model that will probably exist by the time this video is already out. Speaking of, we had to find a champion to act as the base for that custom skin in the first place, and look, I know poetry, it rhymes, picking the champion that got me into League in the first place, but cho'gath was just perfect, not only because he already is technically the champion with the most amount of dinosaur-related skins. Your bones, kid. He's one of the few who can grow to be gigantic, has a plethora of ranged abilities while still being tanky, and can be played anywhere. Top lane, mid lane, hell, this patch the video goes out, I'm pretty sure cho'gath jungle's getting buffed. And also, apparently he's been a bot laner this whole time. Bones. Plus, by using a champion as bare bones and scope as cho'gath, it allowed us to make the abilities even more attuned to our favorite dinosaur, with explosions, shockwaves, and even finding a way to include the rockets. Unfortunately, by nature of the kit, we couldn't fit the T-Hex's signature laser beam into the moveset, but we still did manage to sneak it and several other references into the emotes. Speaking of emotes, what would an official champion release be without all the little extra bits and bobs? Custom ability icons, a champion portrait icon for your summoner profile, and of course a beautiful splash art of Heimerdinger presenting his glorious machination, fully animated and ready for your login screen, because those are back apparently. When did that happen? And the final piece of the puzzle to put it all together, its own custom theme song, which, as you might have guessed, was the music you heard during that initial reveal. Connected to audio, even though the T-Hex has no voice lines, we still had to give it a voice, and while I'm no audio engineer by any means, I did do my darndest trying to mesh together a few greatest hits from Paleo Media and other adjacent properties. Admittedly, I went a little bit overboard with creating too many roars that they couldn't fit them all into the one taunt, but the custom skin fellas did find a neat workaround, having some of them play after you score a kill with ult. There might be too many to show off all at once right now, but I do want to at least play a few to see if you fellas can guess any of the references. Put it all together, and I'm incredibly proud of what we created here, yet at the back of my mind, something was telling me it wasn't enough. Oh yes, my Cassiopeia design, T-Hex, who I wanted to be a champion, and then my arch nemesis, all in the same place. For the Cassiopeia ASU video, those voice line interactions were one of the coolest parts of that project in my eyes, and most of that video was about justifying the design changes that I made to her. But with the T-Hex, the design is already set in stone, besides the head sculpt, I guess, and it has no voice lines to speak of. So if I need to find a way to incorporate something as cool as that, to visualize the T-Hex as a real champion, to prove why it's a good idea, well, the best way to prove something is a good idea to Riot is to show how it's going to make money. And lucky us, we don't live in the fictional universe of the Jurassic Park sequels. We live in the real world, where Jurassic Park sequels still make $1 billion. Paleo Media is back in full swing. Dinosaurs sell and always will, and being a robot one at that leaves near infinite possibilities for potential skins. So I ended up partnering with an onslaught of artists from within my own community and with some friendos from YouTube to produce 13 13 potential T-Hex skins. And I know that sounds a little extreme. Unless your name's Kaisa or Yone, good luck being a modern champion with more than 3 skins in the next 7 years. This was done more so to demonstrate the sheer variety of cosmetics that the T-Hex could fit into. All the different species of dinosaurs, kinds of other monsters, skin lines, and general themes. There's limitless possibilities. We started with some established and popular skin lines like a battle boss from Arcade, an ethereal dino in Empyrean, a demonic Carnotaur in High Noon, and a new project that in hindsight is probably just another elaborate fursuit. Skin lines already well populated and known for being badass with generally inorganic subject matter, and as such overlapped quite nicely with the T-Hex's original theming. But we also need some janitor threshes every once in a while for a bit of contrast, and lucky us, the T-Hex can easily be slotted into some more silly aesthetics. A giant salamander in the Rain Shepherd universe, a chill albelosaur from Ocean Song, a chicken mascot from a Sugar Rush candy shop, a dancing dragon parade during Lunar New Year, bees from Bees, because what channel do you think you're watching? Which then moved us on to the really exciting parts, as by covering the base themes most League players already know, it then allowed us the opportunity to go a bit outside the box with some underrepresented skin lines. The monstrosity giant enemy T-Hex doubling the current count of the Kaiju skin line, the bootleg Toy-Hex acting as a toy Allosaurus a kid customized to their heart's content, a region swap skin asking the question, what if Singed built the T-Hex instead of Heimerdinger, and yeah, no, we're going to hell. This one's fucked up. And last, but certainly not least, because I'm a sucker for Legacy and Machine Herald Victor still has a stranglehold on my brain, I think it would be a massive shame if the T-Hex were to finally release as a champion without an homage to its first ever appearance. Alongside some wonderfully illustrated splash art sketches, it's meant to show just this small sample of what could be possible. I really could think of 100 more like Brute Wyvern inspired T-Hex, Star Nemesis, the fabled Duck skin line. I could go on forever, but much like the rest of this video, it's already developed way beyond its initial scope, so much so I've had trouble stopping myself from just adding more. Like, how did we get to the point where there's a TFT compatible version too? But the project had to stop somewhere, and I think we got pretty close to creating a version of the T-Hex as close to being a real champion as we could possibly get. I say we as an important distinction, because while I might be the idea guy and the one editing the majority of this video, none of this would have been possible without my absolutely amazing team of artists, and by extension, all my wonderful supporters on Patreon, whose support didn't just grant them sneak peeks and updates about this video basically a whole year in advance, but also helped me to ensure that said artists were rightfully paid for all their fantastic work, which ended up being kind of necessary, because by the end of this whole thing, it was slightly expensive. Regardless, it's all done and over now. So if you want to check out any of the individual pieces of this project, or any of the artists involved, or use the fully free-to-use T-Hex custom skin, links to everything and everyone can be found in the description down below. But alas, just like the reign of the dinosaurs, this video is also over. If you liked it, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, leave a comment down below telling me what you thought about this whole thing, what we could have done differently, or maybe how you would implement the T-Hex into League of Legends. All of that stuff helps boost the video in the algorithm, and by extension, can push me towards being financially stable enough to make more videos like this. And hey, if you really want to see more videos like this more frequently and are feeling especially generous, consider becoming one of those Patreon supporters. There's a whole bunch of other benefits as well, depending on what tier you're at, but I've been shilling enough already, and this video, frankly, has gone on for long enough. Thank you fellas so much for being so patient with me, for sticking around till the end of this video, and hopefully I'll get to see you again in the next one.